On the 24th of May, 2004, above 8,000 meters on Everest, a Bulgarian woman named Mariana Maslarova is seen for the last time, at the second step, just below the summit of the world. And then she vanishes. Did she reach the very top? Did she become the first Bulgarian woman on the highest mountain on the planet? No one knows. 20 years before that, on the same mountain, her uncle had disappeared just as completely. The first Bulgarian ever to stand on Everest. One family, one summit, two lives cut short almost at the very same spot. To understand how something like this could even happen, let's go back to a small Bulgarian town where it all began. In the Bulgarian town of Karlovo, at the foot of the Balkan Mountains, on the 2nd of April, 1961, a girl is born. Mariana. Karlovo is a quiet old place, the kind where everyone knows everyone, and where a single family name can sometimes carry more weight than a title or money. In Karlovo, that name is Prodanov. Mariana carries it by right of birth. She is the niece of Hristo Prodanov, a man whose name is spoken in Bulgaria with a special kind of respect. From here, from Karlovo, will come the first Bulgarian ever to climb Everest. And from here, too, a chain of events will stretch out that, decades later, will come back to this same family. Mariana does not grow up alone. There are three sisters in the house, she, Svetlana, and Dimitrina. An ordinary Bulgarian family of its time. School, daily routine, conversations around the shared table. But over that familiar life, there always hangs a great name. When someone from your family in a small town goes off into the mountains and becomes famous, his fame settles on to everyone. In families like that, you learn early on that something is expected of you, even if no one ever says it out loud. In time, Svetlana will become a lawyer. Many years later, it is she who will take on the task of keeping her sister's memory alive, answering questions, arguing against rumors, defending Mariana's name from hasty judgments. But all of that comes later. For now, it's simply Karlovo, a town where the mountains are visible from the window, where they are not some abstraction, but part of a landscape you grow used to from childhood. For some people, the peaks remain just a backdrop for their whole lives. For others, they turn one day into a calling. In the Prodanov family, they already understand one simple thing about great climbs. High mountains give you a great name, but they never give it for free. Mariana grows up inside this family name, with all its pride and all its cost. As a girl, she has not yet chosen her road, but the road seems to have been waiting for her from the very start. At the age of 15, Mariana takes her first step into the mountains, and she never leaves that path again. What the family treats almost as an inheritance becomes, for her, a deliberate choice. Not a loud name, but her own work. Strength, patience, character. She grows fast. She becomes a national-level athlete, in both mountaineering and rock climbing. In those years, climbing is not just preparation for the big mountains, but a discipline of its own, where everything comes down to your fingers, your balance, and your composure on a sheer wall. Mariana reaches the stages of the World Cup, competing among the strongest climbers of her time. The wall becomes her natural element, a place where not only the body is tested, but the will. But to see only an athlete in her would be a mistake. Alongside her training, Mariana is also studying, first library science in Sofia, then history at university. Her field is the theory and history of culture, a world of books and meaning, seemingly worlds away from ice axes and ropes. It is as if two people live inside her at once. And this second person is no less stubborn than the climber. Away from the mountains, Mariana writes poetry, paints, and works in sculpture. She is used to working with her hands, on the vertical face of a rock, over a blank page, and over a block of material from which a shape is born. For her, climbing and creating are about the same thing, to rise higher, to do what she has never done before. The first truly serious mountains come from the Caucasus. In 1983, Mariana climbs Dike Tau, a harsh peak above 5,000 meters, one of the most demanding in the region. For the climbers of that era, the Caucasus is a school of altitude, a place where you prepare yourself for something greater. No longer a training ground, but real risk, where the cost of a mistake is nothing like it is on a practice wall. By the early 1980s, three natures live side by side in Mariana: the athlete, the artist, and the climber. They do not fight each other. They fold into a single character, stubborn, sensitive, and forever aimed upward. In the Prodanov family, this gaze upward had once already led to something great. In the spring of 1984, all of Bulgaria is watching the highest point on the planet, where Hristo Prodanov, Mariana's uncle and the strongest climber in the country, is making his way toward the summit. He is climbing with a large Bulgarian expedition, listed as its deputy leader. The route he chooses is not the easiest one. The West Ridge, a long and technically punishing line that few have ever conquered. And he goes without oxygen bottles, on nothing but his own lungs and heart. On the last, hardest section, his Sherpa partner turns back. It is too dangerous to go on. Prodanov is left alone. On the 20th of April, 1984, at 6:15 in the evening, he becomes the first Bulgarian on the summit of Everest. And not just a Bulgarian. This is the first successful April ascent of the highest mountain in the world in all of history, at a time when the season is not yet considered safe. Prodanov spends 33 minutes at the top. He leaves a film camera up there, a small witness to what the Bulgarians had come to the Himalayas for. Alone, without oxygen, by way of the most difficult ridge. A climb like that becomes a legend in its own right. But the summit is only half of the journey. The most dangerous part of the Great Mountains begins on the descent, when your strength is already spent, and there is still almost no oxygen in the air. Prodanov does not make it down before dark. He is forced to spend the night at an enormous altitude, out in the open, where no one lasts long at the edge of their strength. By morning, he loses his way. The radio link with camp still holds. Over the radio, Prodanov reports something alarming. He has lost his gloves, and soon he will not even be able to hold down the button on the radio. At that altitude, with no protection for his hands, there is very little time left. After that, his voice goes silent. Around the 21st of April, 1984, Hristo Prodanov dies on the descent. What happened in his final hours is never known for certain. His body is never found. The mountain keeps him, somewhere high up on the West Ridge. For Bulgaria, it is at once a triumph and a loss. The country gains its hero, and, in the very same moment, loses him. And for the family back in Karlovo, Everest stops being a distant point on a map. Now it is the place that took one of their own and bound their family name to it forever. You might think that, after her uncle's death, Mariana would turn away from the mountains. Instead, the opposite happens. She does not leave. Her roots only become more serious, as if the loss does not frighten her, but calls her on to keep going where he had stopped. Already in the summer of 1984, the same year that took Prodanov, Mariana climbs the famous Petit Dru in the Alps, a sheer rock tower, one of the most demanding in Europe. In 1986, she climbs Mont Blanc, the highest point in the Alps, and real high altitude arrives in 1987. In August of that year, Mariana takes on her first peak above 7,000 meters. Peak communism in the Pamirs, a harsh summit of nearly 7,500 meters. A month later, in September, she climbs the Matterhorn by the Italian route. And in December, she finds herself on the other side of the world, the first Bulgarian to climb Aconcagua, the highest mountain in South America. In 1988, she is again first among Bulgarians, this time on Denali, the icy giant of Alaska, known for its brutal cold and wind. Twice in 2 years, her name becomes the first in Bulgarian history on an entire continent. This is no longer a hobby, but a serious high-altitude career. On many of her expeditions, her husband is at her side, Mariana Maslarova, one of the strongest climbers in the country, with the most difficult winter walls of the Alps behind him. They move on the same rope, in the mountains and in life, the same risk, the same passion for the great summits. And Mariana's strength is not only in technique. In 1991, she wins the Sofia Marathon, a rare endurance, the kind without which you cannot survive in the big mountains. By this point, she has the Alps, the Pamirs, the Andes, and Alaska behind her, 4 mountain ranges across 3 continents. And then the big expeditions go quiet for years. Life follows its own course. The summits move into the background. But in the Prodanov family, there remains one mountain that no one has ever finished. The very one where Hristo stayed forever. Everest is still waiting. By 2004, it has been exactly 20 years since the day Hristo Prodanov became the first Bulgarian to stand on the roof of the world. The anniversary is a round one, and a heavy one, and Bulgaria is preparing a special commemorative expedition for it. A national team meant to honor Prodanov's memory with a new ascent. For Mariana, this is no longer an abstract anniversary. She has her own, deeply personal goal. She wants to become the first Bulgarian woman on the summit of Everest, and to do it the way her uncle did, without oxygen. The plan is bold and simple, to repeat his path, but now as a woman from the same family. As for the national team, Mariana decides not to join it. The reason is a delicate one. In these years, her husband, Ivan Maslarov, heads the Bulgarian Federation of Alpine Clubs. Any place she takes in an official expedition could easily be written off as her husband's influence. And Mariana does not want her climb to be followed by talk that the road was opened for her not by experience, but by her husband's name. There is, however, another version of the story. According to it, Mariana did not step aside herself. She was cut from the roster. The sources disagree here, and how it really was can no longer be sorted out. One thing is beyond dispute. She goes to Everest on her own. Mariana raises the money and joins an independent international expedition, one that is called Russian-Brazilian. Taking part that season costs somewhere around $10,000. It is a commercial format. People from different countries gathered around a common goal, but bound together far more loosely than a tight-knit national team. And in this lies the true cost of her decision. By going her own way, Mariana ends up among strangers in a foreign language, without the kind of support you have when fellow countrymen share your tent. On the highest and one of the most dangerous mountains on the planet, she is, in essence, alone. The experience behind her is enormous, but there is no one nearby who has known her for years, no one she could trust without reservation. Two main roads lead to the summit of Everest, and they begin in different countries. From the south, climbers approach the mountain from Nepal. From the north, from Tibet, on the Chinese side. Mariana's team chooses the northern Tibetan option and reaches the foot of the mountain across a high mountain plateau. Her route is the northeast ridge, a long line, open to every wind, stretching toward the summit along the very spine of the mountain. There is almost no shelter from the storm and the cold here. The ridge juts out above the slopes like a blade, and a person on it is visible from far away and defenseless against the elements. The higher you go, the harder every step becomes, and retreating along a ridge like that is no easier than pushing forward. The route is considered harsh even by the standards of Everest, and here lies an important difference from her uncle's story. 20 years earlier, Hristo Prodanov went to the same summit, but by a different route and effectively from the opposite side, from the Nepalese west. His niece comes from the north, one mountain, different roads to it. The Tibetan route has its own traps. At great altitude, already close to the summit, the ridge is blocked by what are called the steps, steep rock walls that must be overcome in a place where you have almost no strength left, and the air has thinned to its limit. This is not a metaphor, but a very real set of obstacles, sheer chunks of rock in the middle of unimaginable height. The main one is the second step, a short but treacherous wall just below the crown of Everest, in the thin air zone above 8,000 meters, where the body barely recovers at all. To pass it is to all but reach the goal. It is the second step that will become the key point of her climb. By the end of May, the team sets out on the final stretch. Ahead of them lies the narrow northern ridge, the rock steps, and a thin band of good weather that they have to catch in time. In mountains like these, the window for a climb is short, and it decides everything. For Mariana, this is the last push toward the dream she came here for, to this cold edge of the mountain. On the 24th of May, 2004, Mariana sets out on the decisive push. On days like this, climbers leave in the dark to reach the goal and get back before nightfall. Behind her lie weeks of acclimatization and waiting. Ahead lie the last few hundred meters of altitude, the whole reason for everything. But the mountain is in a foul mood this season. 2004 turns out to be a hard year on Everest. People are dying at altitude, and the northern ridge that year takes several lives. Somewhere high up on the route, another Bulgarian of that same season has been left behind, Hristo Prodanov, for whom Everest became the last. Mariana knows that she is walking a slope that has already taken the life of one of her countrymen, and she goes anyway. At an altitude of about 8,050 meters, she comes upon people. Figures against the snow and the sky are visible from far off. They are two Bulgarians from that very national team Mariana did not join, Ivan Valchev and Ivan Temelkov. Only the meeting is a strange one. They are not going up, but down. The reason is simple and harsh. The leader of the national expedition, Metodi Savov, has given the order to turn back. At altitudes like these, the leader's word is law, and to argue with it is to risk the lives of the whole group. For the official team, the climb is over for the day, and the Bulgarians begin their long descent. But Mariana does not belong to this team. Savov's order does not apply to her. She is with her own, separate expedition, and the decision is hers alone. And while her countrymen are losing altitude meter by meter, Mariana does exactly the opposite. She goes up. In this brief moment lies the whole essence of her character, where the experienced climbers of an entire national team turn around. Where the leader judged the path too dangerous, Mariana chooses to keep going. Two men head down, toward safety. One woman heads up, toward the summit, with so little left to go. From this moment on, there is only the summit above her, and below, no one who could come to her aid. She climbs higher and higher, higher than any Bulgarian on the mountain that day. Step by step, Mariana reaches the second step, at an altitude of 8,680 meters. The very rock wall below the summit toward which her whole journey along the northern ridge had led. Now she is here, just below the crown of Everest, where there is almost no one at all, and here Mariana is seen for the last time. The witness is no random one. It is Russell Bryce, an experienced New Zealand guide. That season he is working on exactly the Tibetan northern side of Everest, the same side Mariana is climbing. In high-altitude mountaineering, everyone knows his name. One of the most famous organizers of expeditions on the mountain, a man who has led dozens of climbers to the summit and has seen Everest in every one of its moods. If anyone can identify a climber at that altitude with certainty, it is him. Bryce spots Mariana at the second step, a reliable, trustworthy observation, and the last one in her story. From here, the summit is very near. Ahead lies only a short stretch of climbing, separating her from the goal she has come all this way for. Mariana has never been this close to her dream. It's worth understanding what altitude like this does to the human body. There is 2 to 3 times less air here than down below. Thoughts get muddled. Every movement takes everything you have. Climbers call this the death zone. Above it, the body barely recovers at all, and you cannot stay there for long. The smallest thing, a gust of wind, one wrong step, time lost, can cost you everything. And yet, at this very edge, Mariana holds on and keeps moving forward toward the very crown. Above this point begins a stretch of which not a single clear picture remains. No confident eyewitness, no understanding of what happened. The last reliable image is her figure at the rock wall below the summit, climbing toward the place the whole family had reached for. What comes next is fragments, guesses, and a single message to hold on to. It arrives the following day, the 25th of May. Russian climbers say they saw Mariana on the descent, at a camp at an altitude of about 7,800 meters. That is already far down, well below the summit zone. If this is true, then she had indeed been higher up, and had then begun to descend. And by that altitude at the second step alone, confirmed the day before by Bryce, Mariana sets a new Bulgarian women's record. No woman from her country had ever climbed that high before. It is a bitter record, because after the Russians report at 7,800 meters, no one sees Mariana again. Not in the camps, not on the route, not higher up, not lower down. Contact breaks off, and it is as if the person simply dissolves into the mountain. Between the 2 points lies an emptiness that can never be filled. On one side, the second step below the summit, where she was seen with certainty. On the other, the descent towards 7,800 meters, according to the Russians. What happened in between, whether she reached the very top, where and how she lost her strength, of this there is not a single solid piece of evidence, only guesses. An enormous stretch of the most dangerous part of the route remains a blank space. Later, a truly strange version will appear. According to it, Mariana did not stay up high, but went down in another direction, toward the Nepalese, southern foot of the mountain, away from her team in the north. It sounds wild, and there is no proof at all. Just one more guess with which people try to close the gaping hole in this story. The fact, though, is harsh and simple. In the final days of May 2004, Mariana disappears somewhere high on Everest. Neither the searches nor the testimony ever come together into a clear picture of her final hours. All that remains is the silence of the mountain and an emptiness where the answer should be. Into this silence comes an official answer. On the 29th of May 2004, Mariana Maslarova is declared dead. As long as a person has not been found, there is always a ghost of hope. But by the end of May it is gone, and her disappearance is given the official status of death. The basis is the testimony of two people, Brazilians from her own expedition. It is they who report her fate, and on their words the conclusion is built. And here another oddity surfaces in the story. The names of these two Brazilians will remain unknown. The world learns of the Bulgarian climber's death from the words of people who were never named. This detail will follow the whole story for years to come. On their testimony, a death certificate is issued in Kathmandu. The documents also give a cause, hypothermia and exhaustion, at an altitude of about 8,700 meters, just below the summit. According to the Brazilians, Mariana was last seen high on the mountain, near the summit zone, and either did not want to descend or could no longer do so. Those words, "did not want to descend," sound especially heavy. At an altitude like that, a refusal or an inability to go down almost always means one thing. There is no time left for a rescue. No one understands this better than her husband. Ivan Maslarov, himself a most experienced climber and the head of the Federation, holds no illusions. He knows the mountains from the inside and looks at what has happened soberly. At the altitude where Mariana was left, there is simply no chance of survival. No one can save her from there anymore. For Maslarov, it is a double blow. He loses both his wife and his partner in the mountains, with whom he had climbed more than one summit. And so, over the course of a few days in May, a strong, experienced woman from Karlovo is reduced to a line in an official document. Her body remains up there, high up, where no rescue team will ever reach. And yet, the mountain gives up one clue. A few days after the conclusion, a piece of testimony appears that changes the whole picture, and it comes from a man who is descending from the very top. On the 1st of June, 2004, the Russian guide Viktor Bobak is making his way down the North Ridge. He has just been on the summit and is returning by the same path Mariana had climbed. In life, they never met. Bobak was already on his way after she had vanished, and there, on the descent, he finds her. The most astonishing thing is precisely where. The body lies very close to the summit, only 40 to 50 meters of elevation below the highest point on the planet, which means that, after the last reliable sighting, she had not stopped, but had kept going up, almost to the very end of the route, almost to the goal. Bobak takes several photographs and later passes them on to Bulgaria. He has no doubts. He is certain. Mariana reached the summit and died already on the way back, on the descent, when her strength had been completely spent. Most likely she stopped to rest and could no longer go on. At an altitude like that, a brief halt often turns out to be fatal. If he is right, the picture comes out at once luminous and merciless. Luminous because Mariana achieves what she had been striving for all her life and what she came to this mountain for. Merciless because the price for it is the ultimate one. Between the dream and death here, only a few hours of descent can fit. But there is a detail that does not allow the story to be closed. The photographs Bobak took near the summit never become public. They are sent to Bulgaria, they are talked about, they are referred to, but the wider public never sees them. Perhaps the main proof of whether Mariana reached the summit remains, after all, somewhere out of everyone's sight. And instead of a final answer, all that remains in the story is what one man on the descent was certain of. But even the firm conviction of an experienced guide is still not proof, and firm proof is precisely what is missing. No one saw Mariana on the summit itself, nor is there a photograph of her from up there, from the top point, the kind of shot that, in mountaineering, usually serves as confirmation of success. Even Bobak's images show her below the summit, not on it. They tell us how high she climbed, but they do not put the final period on it, whether she set foot on the very top. And yet those who knew Mariana personally have no doubts. Her sister Svetlana is certain. She made it. The climbers who shared a rope with her on other mountains think the same. For them, the question is settled. They knew her stubbornness too well to believe that she would turn around just a few meters from her goal. But history and the official lists live by their own rules. Formally, the first Bulgarian woman on Everest is considered to be not Mariana, but Petya Kolcheva. By that time, 9 Bulgarian men had already stood on the highest point on the planet, but not a single woman. Petya Kolcheva climbs in 2009, 5 years later, and brings back undeniable proof. It is her name that is entered into the records as the first Bulgarian woman on the roof of the world. And the most remarkable thing is said by Kolcheva herself. She does not argue with Mariana's memory. On the contrary, she admits that Mariana most likely beat her to it by those very 5 years. It simply can no longer be proven. And so, 2 answers part ways in this story. The document says one thing. The first was Kolcheva in 2009, all confirmed. Memory says another. The first, most likely, was Mariana back in 2004, but the mountain gave up no proof. And between these 2 answers, there will forever remain a gap that nothing can ever close. You might think a story like this would ring out loudly. Instead, the opposite is true. For long years, almost nothing is said about Mariana in Bulgaria. Her name seems to dissolve along with her, in silence, with no loud articles and no anniversary evenings. This is especially strange against the backdrop of the others. Those who died on Everest in that same season are written about and argued over, their stories picked apart in detail, and hers is somehow skirted around, left in the half-shadow, as if it were more comfortable not to remember a woman whose fate had been left without a clear answer. Sometimes the silence is broken, but not in the best way. The well-known Bulgarian climber Duichin Vasilev once let slip a sharp idea, that Mariana could not come to terms with the thought that another woman, with a different surname, would become the first Bulgarian on Everest. The hint is transparent and offensive. Those close to her take it painfully. For them, she went to the mountain not out of jealousy over someone else's primacy, but for the sake of her own long-held dream. And something else remains of her, something that does not depend on the judgments of others, her poems. Some are published in her lifetime. The rest are gathered and put out only after her death. In one of her lines, she writes about something simple and important. The choice to submit to circumstances or to remain yourself, to walk your own path like a hero, is always the person's own. And that is the choice she made. And over the whole story, there hangs one quiet, almost unbelievable coincidence. 2 people from one house in Karlovo, from one family, set out in different years for the very same mountain. Both without oxygen. Both vanish just below the summit. Both remain there, on the slopes, and the mountain gives up neither. They are separated by almost exactly 20 years, April of 1984 and May of 2004. Hristo Prodanov went down in history as the first Bulgarian on the roof of the world. Mariana Maslarova, as very probably the first Bulgarian woman to climb up there as well. Uncle and niece, the beginning and the continuation of one family's story, which the mountain cut short twice, almost at the very same spot, just below the roof of the planet.